Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution that we know we need.
Mama, Miss Pundren.
Those sounds, the jets and the scared child, those were recorded not in a conflict zone thousands of miles away, but here in Toronto. Those sounds were from the short but incredibly impactful film AirShow that features actual refugees, a Tamil family that has survived aerial bombardment and genocide, and their genuine reactions to hearing fighter jets zoom overhead. The artist who created the film, Maya Bastian, is here with us today. She's joined by fellow comrades from the Coalition to Demilitarize the AirShow, which, as you can imagine, is part of the larger anti-war movement that is leaving no stone unturned right now, particularly in its quest to get Canada to stop supplying weapons and their components to the Zionist occupation committing genocide against the Palestinians. This isn't a new campaign. Peace activists, environmentalists, refugee advocates, and even pet lovers have been protesting the AirShow for years. But there have been shifts, increasing urgency, and a new tool in the form of the Arms Embargo Now report that helps activists contrast the oohs and ahs of the AirShow with what those killing machines are actually doing in real time. After you're done listening, be sure to watch and share AirShow. You'll find the film's links in the show notes, along with more about the campaign. As always, we kindly ask you to share this episode with someone who would appreciate it. It's your recommendations that really help us grow the audience and make these wonderful connections with activists on the ground. Now let's meet the trio in the studio today.
My name is Maya Bastian. I am a filmmaker and an artist. My background is in conflict journalism. I've spent quite a number of years, over about 15 years, in conflict and post-conflict zones around the world. I make documentaries, I make narrative fiction, I make experimental, and I live in Toronto.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. My name is Charmine, and I'm an organizer, a more recent one with World Beyond War Toronto, but have been a long time organizer with another group called Known as Legal Toronto. And I also try to pitch in what I can with activist media as an editor with Up in the Ante, which is a social movement journal. And I do a lot of facilitation and training around organizing and direct action. So that's me, and I also live in Toronto.
Hi, my name is Rama Al-Mallah. I'm with the Palestinian Youth Movement, which is a transnational organization for Palestinian and Arab youth in the diaspora. And I'm very happy to be here with you guys tonight.
Now, our audience is likely familiar with the Palestinian Youth Movement and World Beyond War for obvious reasons. We've had representatives of those groups on a few times to talk about the many critical campaigns that you folks have been running. And this is yet another one. But Maya's film, you will have heard sounds from it at the beginning of the show, and to give you a hint, plus the title of the episode, on what we're going to talk about. With all the things that are going on, maybe this might seem like an unsuspecting campaign, perhaps, right? We're going after politicians, banks, climate villains. The list is long, but this is a campaign to demilitarize the AirShow. Yet we have a rep from World Beyond War, the Palestinian Youth Movement, and an artist, conflict journalist. How are all of these things connected? Maya, you want to take a stab at that?
I think that we all feel very strongly about demilitarizing the air show. I think that we're all deeply invested in humanity and what it means to be human, and to be fighting for not just our own rights, but the rights of everyone, because we're connected. And I think that's something that we're being seen more and more now in the world today, is how deeply connected we all are. I think Palestine and has really shown us that. What's happening in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank has really shown us that their struggles are connected to our struggles. And then when you look at something like the air show, it's very plain to see that something very unnecessary and triggering and violent just has no place in a city full of refugees and immigrants. Has no place in a time where we are seeing the direct results of those warplanes on our screens every single day.
You folks have put together a really good website. It's a debriefer for folks, although they should listen all the way through and then they'll get the gist of it. But let's go over the four main reasons why you folks are working so hard to demilitarize the Canadian National Air Show, which takes place in Toronto every single year. Anybody who lives anywhere near the core, in the south of the city particularly, experiences this air show for at least 4 days over the Labor Day long weekend. The four reasons that we'll go over, you could probably come up with more. I even have like a bonus one in my notes, like there's probably endless reasons to do it. Maybe before we actually get to those, does anyone want to speculate on why they do it? What is the reason that they give you to continue doing this air show despite all the reasons we're going to give them not to?
Yeah, you'll hear many, many reasons about why this air show is so important to some people, including some of the folks who, for spectators. I mean, there's reasons from like just the appreciation of aviation. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, aside from, the violent fighter jets, which are only made to bomb people, like they're not made to do loop de loops in the sky for you. But, there are like, older planes that acrobatic planes, I guess, that are more for like entertainment and aren't used for war, right? So a lot of the aviation nerds do come out, and they, when we protest this air show, they're just like, you have no appreciation for the science and engineering and the miracle that is aviation. All the way to just a very like taken for granted nationalist, I'm using air quotes, pride around Canada's history and development technology around, aviation and the military and our role in the war. So you'll have a wide range of spectators with different interests. And also the number one reason is that it's a long-standing thing with the Canadian National Exhibition, the CNE.
Tradition.
Yeah, it brings in revenue, it brings in tourism, it's good for the city, brings people together. So yeah, we get lots of we get the nerdy reasons to the nationalist reasons to the money reasons. When and we there's a lot of counters to that we'll be going to. And but as people have kind of been voicing their concerns over the years about how disruptive it is because it does fly over residential areas. There are many air shows that happen across the world, and a lot of them do happen in more remote places, like in fields. Where there's stands, you can see those planes, and they're kind of away from any urban areas. But there is a really huge question around the Canadian investment, and I mean the government and also private interests in these militarized warplanes. And basically this is manufacturing consent from the public around where we put our resources. So those are kind of like ways we're trying to intervene. Like we're definitely not saying like no, like you can't enjoy your 1930s plane
That's
or
not what they're there for. They're there for the big bombers and the jets and the
I know.
you know.
But one of the planes is like one of the planes that is being used for the forest fires, right? And like
All
that's
right.
like there's that. It's one plane. But yeah, there's those are some of the reasons that we're given.
Okay, well, you've kind of answered one of my questions there too, where like what would a demilitarized air show look like? And you've listed plenty of planes that are apparently very interesting to people, right?
Totally.
That they could watch without what you folks are focused on. And it's funny that a lot of the reasons that folks will give to have the air show, you're right, you have direct counters towards. Particularly the first one, I think, is what we're most focused on, because some people will even say it out loud. The value is national pride in all kinds of forms, right? Whatever it is, but it's nationalism, militarized nationalism, because we're not proud of our history of airplanes. For as far as I know, Canada doesn't hold like a very prominent position in the history of airplanes, right? It's not part of our identity. But so one of the main reasons there that you folks list is that it does. One of the reasons to stop it is because it is an ad for militarism. Rama, why is that a bad thing? There's a lot of Canadians that just would not understand why an ad for Canadian military and pride in Canadian military is a bad thing. They don't get it.
I'll actually start from the point that Charmaine made about, manufacturing consent. Like, seeing F-35 jets in the sky is almost this attempt to normalize these jets and remove them from the context in which they're currently being used, which is the genocide in Gaza. And the Israeli military, one of their main jets that have been used is exactly the F-35 jets that's been used to drop tons of bombs on the hospitals and the refugee camps and the neighborhoods and the schools, and the homes of our people. Um, we're also seeing this in the backdrop of the past 2 years, where the Canadian government has been claiming to have implemented an arms embargo, to have stopped, military shipments to the Zionist entity. The recent report from the Arms Embargo Now coalition, of course, has been able to prove the opposite. We saw what grassroots organizations are able to achieve. Our politicians are lying to us. We're going to take this in our own hands and prove the opposite. So we're seeing these shipments ongoing. We know Canada is part of the F-35 program. We know there are companies here that are sole suppliers. So we know that there are Canadian-made pieces for the F-35 jet that are being sent to the US, assembled there, and then sent to Gaza to fuel this genocide. So I think this juxtaposition of like seeing these F-35 jets, in the sky and being normalized, in a way, in the backdrop of this genocide, is precisely why it's problematic, essentially, especially as the public, we've seen in mass, has been demanding an arms embargo and demanding that these shipments be halted.
Maya said it probably wouldn't come up in conversation, but in her film, I spoke to Maya before we started recording, and I just said, like, one of the most disturbing parts of the film, or unsettling parts of her film, was, although it'll speak to the second point much more, the traumatization of refugees, it was at the end where the family that it focuses on seemed to be part of that normalization process at the end, like of an accepting and watching the air show and kind of being okay with it. And that it took a while for me to get to that point, but that felt really unsettling, because that felt far more dangerous to have people like not question fighter jets overhead, or to not feel fear or anxiety or responsibility or fucking complicity, right? At this point, when seeing this jets, right? whether it's like pride or awe or, all these other emotions that feed into this militarism.
I can speak a little bit to that because when I made the film, I had very strong beliefs, and I've always been anti-military. And then at that time in 2016, the person who I was seeing invited their parents invited me to Oshawa on Remembrance Day to go to a military remembrance. And I was like, I didn't want to do it, but I was dating them and it was a parental invite. So I went. And something that really struck me was interesting because, we go and there's like lists and lists of names of young men who died, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names of young men who had died. And, I was feeling the weight of that and understanding, okay, this is why we have Remembrance Day, right? But what I realized is that maybe the air show when it started in 1947 was necessary, right? Because they were commemorating all of the youth that were conscripted and died. But we've come to a place now in society where it's not necessary, where we don't need it, where that time has passed, and we're in a new time where we're watching our country bomb other countries, where we're watching, or not only bomb but support military action in other countries. So to me, it's like we've changed as a society. We're much more diverse. We have different needs and interests. And I think something like the air show needs to account for and accommodate for that. And the city needs to understand that.
But that's also why it is so necessary from the state's perspective, because we are moving away from that mentality. And you folks are, like from World Beyond War, issuing reports that are having Canadians start to sit uncomfortably with their militarism and what that actually means, because in their minds it's meant peacekeeping for so long, right? That's what they've been taught in school, but now they're facing a completely different picture, that in fact that military that they've been celebrating all of this time, and that industry that they seem to be proud of being involved in, right, the American military industrial complex, is responsible for the worst of the worst. And that is very uncomfortable, right? So the more folks can still look at that F-35, and I keep bringing this up because it really bothered me. You have like the most progressive option out there, like the NDP electorally, and Jagmeet's response to like uproar about the F-35s being bought from the Americans was that we should just make them here ourselves. Like the idea of that just being okay, that being a genuine way to drum up the economy is just like been normalized right across the political spectrum. So you folks, you have your work cut out for you. This isn't to deter you at all. It's just a comment on how entrenched and ratchet up the Liberals seem to be on building elbows up kind of mighty Canadian image.
It's always been, the scenario where if you criticize anything about, the military, it's like, you farted in a room. Like people are just like, why? Like, why do you have to be such a, naysayer about something we should have pride about? And it's, yeah, you're right. It's like this kind of common sense, unquestionable. And this isn't just us in Canada. I feel like everyone around the world who fights for demilitarization, to stop, the growth of armies, has always faced that, like, you're not a patriot. In fact, what you're saying is treasonous. So I think like that is not new, but this particular political moment is really important because we have a new liberal prime minister, and like the liberals kind of come from this, like apparently give lip service to like, you know, Canada as a peacekeeping country. We, want to put resources elsewhere. We now have a prime minister that has committed to 2%, meaning the 2% mark of our military spending to meet the NATO requirement, which is all imaginary. There is actually no logical, like, why 2%? Why the GDP? Like, just across the board, that's the requirement.
He's entertaining 5%.
And yeah, he wants 5% to 2035, which amounts to, billions of dollars. And what people might not know is that national defense is the fourth top spending expenditure of the government spending, the federal government spending. Above healthcare, above education, above Indigenous services, above, you can list all of it. And for what, right? It's just like this very again, manufactured need that we somehow need a strong military, and now even a stronger one that even exceeds what Canada spent, in terms of like comparing it to World War II. So it's just egregious. And so this is a sort of political moment that we are now confronting this, one local air show, which is an advertisement. Also, the controversy of Canada buying these jets, which has been stalled because it's just like, it's been stalled because it's going to be a lot more money than I thought. And we're saying that these critiques are nowhere, right? Like we are basically letting Lockheed Martin have free airspace across our skies for 4 days to wow, quote unquote, wow people with their killing machines during a moment where this is actually a big debate, right? Where we're actually talking about a crisis in, cost of living. We're going to be expecting strikes in the education sector. And so to have this amount of money being placed into defense and military is just egregious. And so, yeah, I think the moment right now is really pivotal that people start, like at least like just we need to disrupt that for sure.
For years, folks have been trying to stop the air show or demilitarize it. And one of the main points is beautifully and painfully depicted in Maya's film, and that it traumatizes folks who have especially experienced aerial bombardment. Maya, how long ago did you make that film again?
I made it in 2016.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the film and why it was important to really genuinely show that impact to people? And then maybe we can talk about, why 10 years later
Yeah.
that isn't important enough for city council or whatnot to have
Yeah.
truly taken these objections into advisement.
Yeah, I mean, I made the film because in 2000, I'm Tamil, Sri Lankan, and in 2009 there was a genocide of Tamil people by the Sri Lankan state, and I had been going to Sri Lanka from that time onwards, and I had seen the devastation of what bombing does, what aerial bombardment can do. And one of the times I went, I came back, and the air show happened. And I had PTSD and I was frozen. I was frozen in the streets. I was, I didn't, I never experienced aerial bombardment in a situation where I was unsafe, but I heard it and I saw the effects of it. So I just realized that it was so unnecessary. And then I moved to Parkdale. And when I moved to Parkdale a decade ago, it's full of immigrants, it's full of refugees, and those planes go over, and I was watching people jump into bushes. And I went and spoke to refugee counselors and asked them if they prepare their clients. And they were like, no, we don't tell them about the air show. Why would we? Which was such a strange dissonance. And so that kind of just started me on this journey of, okay, I want to make a film. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any support. But as soon as I started writing this and telling people what I wanted to do, so many people were like, yes, I will help you, because they all felt the same. And I started to realize that most people in the city don't like the air show. It's mostly people that come from out. That's what I've seen. So yeah, and then we made the film, and it was I think I mentioned it to you earlier that it's the father and daughter in the film are refugees who have experienced aerial bombardment, and we shot it during the air show, and they had never experienced the air show before. So it was a really interesting experiment, and I held a lot of space for them. The first time one of the planes flew over, I had given them the warning. They didn't think it was going to be as realistic to their experience as it was, and so the first time the planes flew over, the daughter jumped into the father's arms and screamed, and we stopped the cameras, and I talked to them, and the father for the rest of the shoot kept saying to me, why is it necessary? Why is it necessary? That's all he kept saying over and over again, with this look of complete shock on his face. So it felt really important. And at that time, it hit kind of the cultural zeitgeist, and a lot of press happened. There's a lot of, people were really, there was huge debates online, and it was a big thing. And as I mentioned, I got death threats. I got people very angry that I was being anti-Canadian. People kept saying, like, why don't you go back where you came from? And I'm like, well, I was born here. So herein lies the problem. So yeah, I do feel it was, at that time, it felt important. It feels even more important now. And I think it's a testament to the story and to what I was trying to say, that every year it gets like thousands of views and people feel affected by the film, because it's never going away, right? Like we're still facing this. And the fact that we have to see the devastation every day, of what these airplanes do, and that we're still promoting them, is like mind boggling. It makes no sense to any rational person. It makes no sense that we're watching this happen. And yet the city continues to promote it. And there was a moment, like on the air show website for many years, it was like, loud, loud, loud. It's going to be loud, loud, loud. And then during the time, I think during my film, and there was a lot of other people speaking up, and there was a bunch of articles about it, they changed that, and they had a little disclaimer that said, we are aware that this air show may cause X, Y, and Z to people and whatever. And I don't know what it's like now, but apparently, they really don't care. Like it's really not about what the people want. And at the time this is my last point, but at the time when I was doing the press, people kept saying, do you want to cancel the air show? And because I was on, national press, I didn't want to take a hardline view. And so I said, no, but why does it have to be over the city? It does not. It started in Downsview Park. It could be somewhere else. I get that, we're now talking about demilitarization, which I fully support. But at that time, I was like, there's just no reason for it to fly over a city full of immigrants and a city full of people who have had experiences such as these. So, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't think it should make any sense to any rational person.
No, as we go through the reasons why not, like they're countless. And I think, to your point, whether you move it or demilitarize it or stop it, the point is the same. Like you're forcefully subjecting people to it when you hold it over the city, not just the nationalism, but the dangers, right? And then the trauma that will affect not just people that have experienced what you described.
There's no other air show in the world that I could find that's held over a major metropolitan city. They're all in airfields.
I mean, I think it also goes like beyond this air show. Like this air show is like one, element of complicity and like attempt to normalize this, but we're talking about like, our institutions and our pension funds being invested in weapons manufacturers. We're talking about like research partnerships on our university campuses that are making research prototypes to improve missiles and weapons. So this is like one element of like this broader complicity that we're seeing in Canada. And we've seen the magnitude of this genocide, and for sure like the scenes and the videos that come out of Gaza are like incomprehensible at this point. They're sites that I don't think anyone has ever been able to see, especially now with the starvation. But we've seen like the magnitude of this genocide push the Canadian public and specifically also the Palestinian and Arab diaspora to take to the streets week after week in mass numbers, demanding an arms embargo and demanding an end to Canadian complicity. We've seen the same on like the student side, demanding divestment, demanding an end to these research partnerships. So we're seeing, the magnitude of this genocide like galvanize the masses even more, and demand like that all of these different elements of complicity are halted essentially. The recent report that came out is I think very important because it was a testament to this commitment from the masses to hold our government accountable, and is now being used as a tool of accountability, but also like creating a crisis for the government and ensuring that their support to the Zionist entity is not like an easy thing to maintain. It's a difficult and untenable thing to maintain. And I think like sharpening the contradictions around like things like this air show is part of this process of like creating a crisis and making sure that all of these things are always highlighted, that we're sharpening these contradictions, and showing the juxtaposition of these weapons being made in our backyards and flown over our cities, while they're also being sent to fuel and sustain a genocide. And I think, like, for sure we have a long way to go in demanding an arms embargo, but we're starting to see, the fruits of this pressure. Yesterday, Ottawa-based Calian, who was revealed to be shipping GPS antennas to Elbit Systems, actually said that they will be, halting shipments. So we're seeing these victories coming, these material wins for the arms embargo campaign and the movement come as well. And yeah, like, we're seeing that this mass pressure does work. We just need to maintain it.
What great timing to have that report while you're questioning, the presence of F-35s in the sky. I think Rama just, explained it perfectly, the way that we make them in all the small towns around here, then fly them over the skies and then ship them abroad. And I think, yeah, the fruits of the movement and the cooperation are evident here too, right? Watching all of this collaboration happening, and to hit every pressure point imaginable, right? Even the air show, even, that Canadian tradition of the CNE. How dare you? It kind of goes along with Remembrance Day, Charmaine. Like that, when you were talking, I was like, yeah, and Maya as well. Like that's another day that just like people don't like you making those contradictions, but they're like the perfect times to do it, right? There are other reasons listed on the website and that have been given to officials. I don't want to spend too much time on them because I do want to talk about how the campaign is working, and they seem to, like, no offense, but they seem to pale in comparison to what we're talking about of like entrenching militarism and contributing to a genocide. But like, pets, everyone's always like pets, fireworks, and all of that jazz. Like it has impact to the environment, right? To the wildlife, to folks' pets and children who don't understand what's happening. It's a waste of fucking money, right? It disrupts the community in so many ways. Like all that revenue they talk about at the waterfront, I just feel traffic. Surely if you live in Parkdale, like there's just cars parked on every lawn everywhere. It's just like, it's not a good place. It doesn't feel like community during the CNE in general, but on Labor Day weekend, it's something else down there. But yeah, so like a laundry list has been presented to City Council, right? I'm sure you've had petitions with thousands of signatures, right? Like over the years, we have just generated so much evidence and public sentiment. There seemed to be a little bit of movement. I'm teasing you though, right? Like Charmaine, I'm looking at Charmaine here in the camera. She feels me looking at her. I don't know, but Olivia Chow, right? The most progressive mayor we've ever had. Everyone knows, my whole audience knows I'm being facetious. I don't need scare quotes. So she heard you, right? And she said she would take these objections into advisement. Was there any evidence that City Council has heard or seen Maya's film, perhaps? Maybe that should be a mandatory screening, or they heard the many, many campaigns that have already been waged so far. Was there any adjustment, any glimmer of hope this year as it shaped up?
Yeah, I mean, I can't offer proof that any of it's been heard or taken into account. I think Olivia Chow did release like a statement, just being like, hey, like, I know this can upset people and your pets, so just like take care. Kind of like it was like a heat warning, or something. And so, no, what we're asking, our demand right now if you go to the website, is to submit a note or an email to your local city councilor around this, and keep the pressure up, yeah, to get these militarized, loud, killing machines out of the sky. But Olivia Chow has been, a consistent disappointment around this, especially around organizing around Gaza. Like she's come out, comparing the protests to like supporting Hamas, and like has never been supportive and never wanted to take meetings with the movement. So I don't expect her to be on the right side of history with this one, but this is a hard campaign to organize around. A lot of people who might be against it. It's really weird to kind of like confront people who are very supportive, especially pro-military, folks, or pro-nationalist folks. It's a little scary. It's obviously like maybe they're not the audience we want, but even if we're just like leafleting with like facts about military spending and the impacts, this is a really hard issue to organize around because it's so embedded, and so I think um, the city council thing is like kind of like one tactic. Public awareness is another, and also just like providing educationals. Also, just maybe creating our own cultural space, like maybe creating a space where we like talk about like what a world of peace and justice would look like. These are all different tactics that we all need to engage in. But I will say, when it comes year after year with the air show, I feel like a lot of people are just kind of like, okay, either I'll leave town or I'll just like get earplugs and put up with it because it's 4 days, and it's kind of like it feels like the corporations and the CNE just will win out every time, right? Like they have way more power. So it's a campaign that we need to keep building year after year, and and having and showcasing different forms of intervention, like this documentary, like the voices of those impacted, and keep building that. But it's really hard because of just how embedded this idea that like if you want freedom, you need these fighter jets. If you want democracy, you need a strong army. It can be intimidating. Like for experienced organizers, it's very intimidating to go into this foray and try and talk to people. They just think you are like this treasonous, jerk, and so you just hear everything. Like, if you don't like it, get out of the country, like that stuff. So there's definitely like city councilors on the left who are sympathetic.
We have city councilors on the
That
left.
we feel
Sorry.
yes, that's true behind me. Yeah. Someone on the left that might be sympathetic, but it's an issue that I feel like many don't want to just take up, you know. And for sure I know if Olivia Chow was like, oh yeah, I'll look at like maybe moving the CNE, I'm sure she can anticipate the backlash, around it. So yeah, unfortunately, she might have taken into consideration, but the air show is still on for this year. But we can always try for next year, right?
Well, it made me think of the Giller Prize and the tactics that artists against the war on Gaza and writers against the war on Gaza, I'm probably getting some of their acronyms wrong, but their mantra, so to speak, when approaching this was like, let us turn their stage into our platform. So whenever Scotiabank tries to pretend they're like part of the Canadian fabric and do this, benefactors of literature, we will be there to remind them of the contradictions of that, of where their funds go. And it became like just a marketing nightmare for Scotiabank to spend all this money to put on these things that were supposed to build up their brand. But activists took all of those opportunities to kind of tear down the brand a bit. And eventually they had to adjust their tactics. So may you be able to turn this stage, whether you get it canceled or not. If they want to fly these jets over, then you can say, fine. You see these jets? Here's what they do. Here's what they really do. Here is who's making them. Here's the address to find that factory that's sending components. Here's where they're being shipped from. It does provide that backdrop to make those contradictions in the meantime, right? Until we can do better than flying F-35s over for entertainment purposes. Because that actually was quite successful. But yeah, it's like that institution, not just the air show, but the CNE. And then anytime you got a canvas on a hard topic where there's like families, where people feel like they should be totally insulated from politics, is like, "Arr," like even sometimes you show up at a farmer's market and people are like, can't you leave me alone, like as though there's like political spheres you enter and you can be engaged on politics. Otherwise, like they're going in for $50 corn dogs and they do not want to be reminded of the role Canada plays, right? Like it's just not today, people. So I get on top of having to deal with, folks who who say things like Canadians died for our charter rights. They're never fun to deal with.
Yeah. And also the links to like, this is family friendly. I'm here with my kids. Like the linking of like, yeah, uh, you know, having a heteronormative family enjoying this army thing. It's just like, it's just like over and over again, the messaging of like what is considered value, and yeah, and it's a space that reproduces a lot of racism, right? So if you're not part of that, if you are, like I don't have to remind listeners, just a few years ago, our previous premier said refugees are welcome. There was an election where Syria was actually a very big political struggle, right? To like bring to support more Syrian refugees to enter because we saw a racist system that didn't prioritize refugees who of color. And we see that now with doing anything that's like anti-military, especially with the air show, right? Like those people should be lucky they're here. If they don't like it, they should leave. Like these racist narratives just come out of everyday, people like it's nothing. And yeah, it just kind of I don't mind the challenge. Like I'm not saying like I'm gonna step away, like we should step away from that. But what I'm trying to get down to listeners is that we all need to participate in this like cultural and political shift to talk about what like where the money is going and what it's doing and the death it's creating and how that is purposely and systemically like shielded from us, right? Like they don't fly an F jet and then after have a giant image of like, hey, here's what the jet does right across the sky. Now, if I had the money and that would be a really great culture jamming moment, I would totally do that. I would show those images as much as I can. For now, we just have our printers in our union offices um, or wherever we do our printing and just try and poster the hell out of the area to let people know.
So on top of the campaign that you have for folks to, which will be linked in the show notes, to contact their city councilors, do you suggest folks outside the city, is there anywhere for them to place pressure? Obviously having the conversations that you're talking about, like the broader conversations, but the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition, should they be hearing from folks saying, you know what, I would still come if there's no air show. That doesn't need to be an integral part of the exhibition.
I mean, feel free for anyone to jump in. Like, I think this is very much linked to the arms embargo campaign that we have an arms embargo starting, and yet we have public money going towards showcasing and advertising um, jets and weapons that are massacring people right now. So for me, all roads lead to the arms embargo and making links to how much these private corporations and also governments are profiting off of the genocide. So definitely go to the arms embargo website and all the demands there. Like this is one focal point in Toronto, but it is really much linked to the arms embargo campaign.
Maya or Rema, is there anything that you'd like to add before we kind of sign off?
Um, my film is free to watch. It's online on Vimeo, so if anybody wants to see it, I think it's a dramatization. It hits pretty heavy. I think it's a good way to reach people that maybe don't understand because it's not a documentary, right? Like so, it's kind of entertainment, but it's entertainment with a purpose. So if there's people in your life that don't understand why demilitarizing the air show is important, show them the film.
And it's 8 minutes. So the link is in the show notes. You have time to watch it. Your friends you share it with, they have time to watch it. I mean, shit, even the trailer I found first was like, whoa. It's the father running with the daughter down the street, cradling her with flashbacks and whatnot going on. You knew exactly where it was going, but the whole 8 minutes is definitely a must watch.
It's really powerful, and it's such a good tool as part of the intervention. So thank you.
Rama? is there anything that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, just like a couple words, I guess, but honestly, just calling on people to stay mobilized and stay organized. You know, it's been 2 years since this genocide, but it's important for us to, to stay organized and keep the pressure up. There's a protest this Friday at General Dynamics at 2 p.m. If people are nearby. There's also a protest in Ottawa, I think, if you're closer to there, but yeah, this is like the bare minimum, and we owe this to our people in Gaza. So thank you guys.
Just a point of clarification, did you say Friday at General Dynamics?
Yes, exactly, at 2 p.m.
This episode won't air before then, but I just want to make sure that I promote it separately, like using our socials.
There will be many more protests at these locations as arms embargo stuff heats up. So, yeah.
Well, that was the best part about that report. I think that it provided, although it was maddening to see how many Canadian companies were playing a role, it was also like, ooh, look how close they are. That one's just down the street, or that seems really accessible to me. It's not a far off evil villain conglomerate that I have no impact on. Me and 8 friends could surely stop people from coming and going into this factory for a morning. You know, just a suggestion, but there was just lots to do, lots of opportunities that report created, lots with big feelings. But yes, let it be a tool to create the political crisis you folks were brewing for. And that is much needed at this point. I thank you all, not just for coming on the show and spending your time and energy like sharing with the audience, but for doing what you're doing on the ground, especially, and for what you're contributing to our communities. I very, very much appreciate it. You enjoy your day.
Thanks, Jessa.
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.